Welcome to the MS&Me Radio Network, a division of the Multiple Sclerosis Global Support Network. The following program broadcast is an original creation by the broadcast entity. Discussion within the following broadcast should be used for informational purposes only and is not a substitute for professional medical advice or consultation. Before considering application of any broadcast content in the following program, please consult your healthcare provider. If you feel you are having a medical emergency, please contact your local health services for immediate assistance. MS&Me Media and the Multiple Sclerosis Global Support Network do not guarantee or warrant the accuracy of information in the broadcast to follow. The Multiple Sclerosis Global Support Network provisions broadcast services to program hosts. Information discussed in the broadcast does not necessarily reflect the views, opinions, or goals of the network and are solely those of the show broadcast host. Should you wish to host a broadcast, please visit our website at msmemedia.com and submit a request to become a program host. We thank you for listening to the MS&Me Radio Network. Enjoy the show.
Hi, welcome to what is the 17th episode of A Couple Takes on MS. This is Dan Digman.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Digman.
And we're here tonight, today, this morning, whenever it is you're hearing us on this show. A Couple Takes on MS. I'm Dan. I have relapsing remitting MS.
And I'm Jennifer, and I have secondary progressive MS.
And we are a married couple, and with the couple takes, we're going to provide different perspectives because Jennifer has the progressive form of MS, and I'm relapsing remitting. So, what do you have on tap for us today, my love?
Well, I read an article that is making me ask more questions than I ever thought. In October 4th actually, Healthline.com published an article, Why Americans with Multiple Sclerosis Are Traveling to Russia for Treatment. Don't get me wrong, I love to travel, and I've never been to Russia, but it made me ask you the question, Dan, would you travel to Russia for treatment? I mean, what people are traveling for is an experimental treatment for MS known as HSCT, which is available in North America, but it's more accessible and less expensive in Russia. So, would you travel for some sort of treatment such as this? I mean, would you do something like that?
Well, I guess what is specifically the treatment? It, from my understanding, it dealt with stem cells and some form of chemotherapy.
And I can't say the name, but it's a really big word that starts with AGMATOPOIETIC, stem cell transplantation. And it's a therapy for MS that has been shown in many cases to halt progression in a single treatment. However, in North America, it's really expensive and it's considered very risky, and it isn't widely available. So you can go to Russia or Mexico to have this treatment, and I'm just wondering, is it worth it? Would you do it? How will you know? Cue Whitney Houston, my very first concert ever. If you don't know Whitney Houston, look her up. Great pop diva. God rest her soul. But my question is, how will you know if you need to do something like HCST or some other experimental treatment, or even change your medication? What will it take for you to need or to be willing to try something like that?
And this is a great question, I think, in the sense that I also was involved in a pharmaceutical investigation or a trial to ask me the questions, when would I change my medicine? I mean, they were talking about a new medication coming out for relapsing remitting MS, And it's just the reality. And again, we're not advocating, advertising, promoting anything. We're just saying fact. I mean, I've had MS for 18 years. I've been on beta-serin for the bulk of those 18 years. And it's like, what would the investigator, the researcher had a great question. They're like, what would it take for you to change your medicine? I mean, we've seen so many new medications come out since we were both diagnosed with MS. Happy anniversary, by the way. Jennifer just
Thank you, Dan.
celebrated her 20 years with the multiple sclerosis.
Woo woo.
But it's just a question of when would I decide that it was time to change my medicine? And I think that's the big question, is that I've been on beta-serin and I've maintained
Right.
fairly well throughout the 18 years that I've had MS. And then it's the question is, okay, if I, for whatever reason, however you measured it, got worse, I could change my, that could cause me to pause to consider it. But then it's always the question, is the changing of the medicine for those reasons, is that too late, and should I have been looking at changing before that?
Again, cue Whitney Houston. Because how will you know? I mean, I have been diagnosed for 20 years, and I remember about 15 years ago, it was becoming difficult for me to walk. And I was falling a lot, and potentially I should have changed my medication at the onset of these new symptoms. But I didn't, which I don't know if I want to say I regret. And I wasn't extremely aggressive. The disease was wicked strong, and I was happy to know that I was doing as well as I thought I was doing, and I wasn't, like I said, really aggressive. So I didn't know that I needed to change medication until it became really clear that I was really struggling. And that's when I left my first neurologist and started seeking treatment in Ann Arbor. And it was more aggressive, but I didn't know that I needed to do that. And that's like you, babe. How will you know? What will it take where you will say, oh man, I need to change my medicine? Because it's not like MRIs are cheap, and it's not like doctors have crystal balls and they can say, oh, Dan, you're getting worse and you need to change. So will you know, or how will you know?
And I think that's the reality. I was diagnosed with MS. I was put on beta-serin, but it was affecting my liver enzymes, and so they put me on another medicine. But I was on that for maybe about a year, and after an MRI showed the activity of increase in plaques and lesions and everything on my brain was enough to freak out my neurologist, who doesn't
Right.
get excited about a lot of things. And it's just like, so he switched me back to the beta-serin to take a chance, and my liver enzymes have been fine for the 17 years since then. But the reality is, I was on another medication, and within that time, fortunately, none of the new lesions were affected anything else within my body. But you just think, but damage is already done.
Right. And me, I was taking Copaxone, which I highly, I was really happy with. And I thought it was treating me really well, after the aggressive first couple years after my diagnosis. So I was on Copaxone, and that is when I really started to see the progression, i.e. I was falling a lot, I was having difficulty with my balance, I was having trouble picking up my feet, and my neurologist wasn't comfortable using a more, granted this was 20 years ago or 15 years ago, using a more aggressive therapy. So I went where a doctor would, because I didn't want to get worse. And I guess that begs the question, how do you define getting worse? Well, for me, it was that wheelchair, and I maybe waited too long and I'll never know. But I did see a difference when I started using Navantrone, which is a therapy that's not used as regularly or frequently as it was 15 years ago. But so I made that change, and that stabilized my MS. I don't know if I would be willing to go to Russia. Had it been 15 years ago and the information that's available now was available then, I don't know if I would have done something that aggressive or that uncertain, especially because there aren't a ton of clinical studies and there's not a lot of information about weighing the risks and the benefits. But I know that this wheelchair, not being able to walk, was a huge, huge thing I didn't want to happen. So I wanted to be more aggressive than my neurologist when I was just taking Copaxone. Copaxone was being, so I started with the Navantrone and a new doctor. Forgive me, I'm a little short of breath today. That's not good. I mean, it's just maybe I'm a little tired. That's the nature of the disease, but I think to know that when is the right time to make that change, and what are you willing to do? Are you willing to go to Russia and reboot your entire immune system? God knows what kind of side effects that could cause. And if someone like me, I am considered secondary progressive, I don't even know if that HCST treatment is for somebody with secondary progressive MS. But am I at the point where I'm like, it's been 20 years, what the heck am I out if it doesn't work? I mean, I'm out a lot.
I would say a lot of money.
A lot of money and potentially a lot of life. I mean, I don't know what can happen. So I guess that's a lot of the questions that MS kind of forces us to ask. And you made a great analogy to gambling.
We don't know, and that's the thing. I mean, there's lots of medicine, and there is medical research that shows that there is, that are positive impacts, with the disease-modifying medications to slow the progression, the severity of exacerbations and everything. But it's not a guarantee. And if you're on the medicine and you have an exacerbation, you say, well, why am I on this? And then it's just like, well, but it could have been a lot worse, a lot more aggressive of a relapse, or in remission, the relapse. And it's a sincere gamble that we're taking this chance. I mean, the amount of money, and we all talk about the cost of MS medications that are, over 90, averaging over $90,000 a year. It's like, that's a lot of money to put in on the table to say, yeah, I believe this is going to give me the best option. And it's like, you do. It's like it's like you're all in. And I think then it goes from the gambling to playing the stock market and everything, because it's like, when you look at the stocks and things going up and down and everything, you look at what it's doing to your retirement. It's like, do I cash out? Do I reinvest? Do I do this? Or do I just stay the course, leave my money there, continue to do this, and hope for the best?
And I look back at that analogy. Again, Dan's a writer, so he's excellent with analogies. But I look at that and I think back 15 years ago, I was all in with Copaxone. And it's a great drug, and it treats every person differently. This is just my experience. But I was all in, and I was not thinking I needed to change. But then on one particular day, I fell out of the shower when I closed my eyes. And when you're soapy and you're laying there, it's a pretty scary moment. And I thought, this can't continue happening. I had been falling. I had been having difficulty picking up my feet, as I mentioned. And that's when I knew I just couldn't go on like that. I I can't simply close my eyes in the shower and fall out of the shower and think that's okay. And so that was the moment where I said, okay, no more of this. And maybe it was too late, like you were saying with the stock market. Maybe I experienced a stock market crash. I should have changed my medicine sooner, but thank God I did at that time so that my disease didn't worsen. And I was fortunate with the Nimantrone. And now, I took that to maximum capacity, the entire dosage that I could take, and it did wonderful things for me. But here, about 3 years ago, my doctor switched me to another therapy that was available to treat my MS. And again, you're playing the odds. Will this help? What's available? And no one really knows.
And that's, excuse me, that's where it opens the door, because then another question that this researcher asked me was something about, et cetera, about medicine for relapsing remitting, and that is where I get on my soapbox, and I'm getting on my soapbox now, but just how there's been so much done, and thank God that there are so many more medications on the market for treating relapsing remitting MS. When we were diagnosed, there were 3. Now there's at least 14, if not 15 now.
And there's oral medications, which is like the gold standard back in the day. I remember and I'm sure you do too, there were 3 injectable medications, and we looked forward to the day that, someday we're going to be able to take oral medication. And so that's really exciting, but I'll leave you to continue on your soapbox.
No, because those are great points. And my point to the researcher was, this is all great news, but anytime a new medicine is introduced and approved by the FDA, you have friends and people on Facebook sending you articles and saying, hey, did you check this out? And it's like, that's very exciting. It's exciting for the MS community. All of us, because we're all affected by the disease differently, and we all react to medicines differently. What a great thing. But for me, that doesn't do a lot.
Well, I'm going to say at this point in time, scooch over, let me join you on that soapbox, because I'm going to say, it's been 20 years. I've walked in at least 20 MS walks. I've raised money. We've had fundraisers. We've really been involved in this fight. And I don't want to be a jerk, but I'm going to be, because it's really going to burn my butt if they cure this disease and then people who are newly diagnosed get relief, but us old-timers, we don't get anything. There's no therapy to fix the disease. So I think if I can join you on the soapbox, is that kind of what you're saying?
Well, I think it's a point where they're doing okay. They're doing incredible research on myelin repair, fixing and everything. And I think that what you said, like with the stem cell in Russia, it's like to slow the progression and everything, and
to reboot
the immune system, which is great, because then it wouldn't necessarily cause more damage, but at the same time, we're damaged goods.
Yeah. What about the damage that
we've got baggage, and I think it's great that they're doing more and more research for disease modifying therapies, and that's phenomenal in treatment. But as far as the repairing and fixing, because you reboot your immune system, the damage that keeps you from walking is still going to be there. The damage that's there because I can't feel my hands, that's still there.
And maybe this is where we are a little lax or a little uninformed. And if we are, I would love it if a listener could just shoot us an email, call us out and say, no, you're missing this, this, and this. But I feel like every piece of information I read is about a new therapy to slow the progression or the worsening of the disease, but I don't read anything about fixing what damage has been done. And that's where, I certainly appreciate, and I don't want, I'm looking at a photo of our niece. God forbid she should get diagnosed with the disease. And if she does, I'm thankful that she will have medication that Dan and I did when we were diagnosed. But what about us? What about those of us who have been living with the disease for any amount of time where it has damaged us, done damage to our nervous system? What are they going to do? What are we going to do? Because you have to be active in your treatment. We can't just sit back and wait for someone to fix us. We have to be involved in this fight and trying to help ourselves. But it's like, how can we help ourselves if everything is focused on the newly diagnosed or the new therapies, where it's not like much for the people that have been living with the disease?
I think that, and that's where again, it's not to sound sour grapes and everything, because there's a lot of exciting things happening, and
absolutely,
I get that, but we celebrated with everyone what an incredible thing with Ocrevus when when there finally is a disease-modifying therapy for people with progressive MS. And the world rejoiced. I get that, but at the same time, they're doing so much with myelin repair and fixing and stuff. I will celebrate and explode with excitement when they come out like they did with Ocrevus, but they come out with something that here is the myelin repair that can be applied across the board for everybody living with this disease who's had damage done, who's felt and seen and lived with the impacts of damaged myelin. But here is the therapy that is going to fix you, that's going to help advance your treatment. And again, I would love if somebody emailed to say, hey, Digman, this is out there. But there is nothing there. We know the research is happening, that's being done, but I think after, nearly 2 decades, you're like,
for us both.
when will we have that news of like, boom, there's this disease or this myelin repair that everyone can use?
And I completely understand, because that's what we both want. But is that what keeps us going? Is, when I have my dark, poopy days where I'm just like depressed and all sad that the disease has got the best of me, but is what is keeping me going is the promise of a fix.
That actually seemed like, this seems like our first rant or something. It's not rant, it's just thinking that as we're talking about what would you do or what would it take or how will I know, and I think it's like, for me, I would go out and I will know if there's something I feel that would help change things beyond what I've been doing. And I think that's where, would I go to Russia for a immune system reboot? No, but if I went, if there was something with myelin repair, things that showed promise that it could happen, I would seriously consider it.
And what's interesting is, while we've been talking, I looked for some information from the National Multiple Sclerosis Society, our friends and supporters, and the reason that we raise money and walk every year. I air quote walk because I roll, but you all understand that. But anywho, they had an article about nervous system repair and trying to reverse the damage to regain function. And the MS Society has been working really hard about that. So I can join you on your soapbox and you can join me. But the MS Society really has been looking into that, and they're looking at 4 or 5 different approaches to help with myelin repair. And I feel comforted in that, and they're at a pivotal moment where they can, change the landscape for people with MS, because they're trying to, regrow myelin. They're trying to repair myelin. They're using stem cells to treat MS damage. They're finding ways to protect nerve damage or nervous system damage. So, we can be crusty and crabby about what would you do and how will you know. And those are great questions to ask. But I think when it boils down to it, we need to look to resources like the National Multiple Sclerosis and always have hope that there is going to be a future. I mean, if you can stick through what you're going through right now, if you can stick with it, I really believe, and I think we all need to believe, that there's hope out there, that there will be repair, and we don't need to turn one faction of people with multiple sclerosis, i.e. the newly diagnosed, against us old timers and we want to be fixed, because we do have that National MS Society, along with the MS Foundation and the MS Association of America, and numerous drug companies and neurologists who are out there looking to better the lives of all of us living with multiple sclerosis.
And I think that's where, like with the National MS Society, together we're stronger. So yeah, we're all truly are in this together. I think it's just, as far as our soapboxes, it's just to say, everything in the development of disease-modifying drugs is great, and going to Russia, whatever, for these reboots and stuff. That's all encouraging. But then it's just like, just being an advocate and just saying, continue to do this work to fix us.
Yeah, to fix us, and to remember that we want to be one society, or one, we want to be one really strong united front of the 2.5 million people worldwide living with multiple sclerosis. There's strength in numbers, and we're stronger when we're together. And I think that we can have those moments like you and I just had for the last 25 minutes, where we rant about the disease, and give yourself slack if you're listening to us, and let yourself rant every once in a while, because multiple sclerosis is not for the weak. It's a frustrating disease, but pat yourself on the back if you have it and you're living with it, because you are tough. And thank you for joining us today and listening to us rant. And again, if you want to reach out to us and give us your opinion, or inform us, or ask us questions, please do that. On social media, we are...
Go to Twitter, it's DanJenDig, and online, our website is danandjenniferdigman.com. Thank you for joining us again today on A Couple Takes on MS, and thank you to the MS&Me Radio Network for having us on air with you, and thanks to Blue Giraffe Kid for developing our theme music for our show. Thank you to everyone for listening. Thanks to Jennifer for being my other part of the couple.
Thank you, Dan. Have a great day, and we'll talk to you next week.